So the focus will be from strengthening awareness and movement from the center, which is also the posterior core. So we're going to start sitting in front of our bolster that is set up on a rolled blanket with a bolster sandwich here. And then you've got a blanket on top that could be a quarter fold and then kind of placed in half. If that's too much bulk under your neck, just make it lower, just like you're used to making it a quarter fold. But I find that in my Baddha Konasana pose, when I'm focusing on my center, right? So I have like, okay, I'll have an idea in my pose what I'm bringing to the table. When I focus on the center, I like the neck to be very comfortable. So when you have your blocks kind of close to the legs, tease the legs to have support. And then you'll take your buckle, your belt loop, I suppose, and I want you to cross it. So give yourself plenty of belt, right? Big loop, plenty of a loop. And then as you twist it, you're going to cross the belt so it's in a twist. Sometimes I feel like I got this together and then I don't. Okay. So it's twisted around. Best part about this practice is that you can always improve on your ability to maneuver these things. So you're not alone in concerning how to get this on. So I have this in a cross. Can you see that? It's crossed. I took it around my feet like I'm used to in Baddha Konasana, and I twisted the belt. If that gets too frenetic for you, don't worry about it. Just come back to your regular Baddha Konasana. It's going to seal the pose a little bit closer into your core line. So as you lower back, you might have your sandbag nearby, but let's start with positioning our hips and our waistband for elongation of the core. And the blanket might feel like very comfortable. It's so close, I didn't have to lower down my brain very far. But nudge in that blanket so it feels as if this back of your, kind of even your sense of your mouth, your jaw, it is pretty interesting to notice this whole layer of jaw and the jawline, and then feel that connection back into the upper neck and make sure the blanket is helping lift that up. So as your brain and your eyes can relax, you feel like you're kind of in a brace. A little bit of a brace feeling when the blanket is tucked in here. So align to your standards right now. If you don't like this blanket elevation, then turn it so it's lower. Feel that the blocks are simply supporting your legs, but there is circulation demands on your legs with the height of your blocks. So you can have them flat, you can have them a little bit higher, and so they kind of wedge into the leg. And the belt feels pretty tense, right? It's a very gripped up position for your thigh matrix. Move a sandbag below the sternum, so it's across, and the movement of the breathing cycle is to massage the organs, but also to stimulate the lungs and the diaphragm. So you might sense that those two concerns are unique to your concentration, right? The diaphragm and the lungs. So let's lower the arms down, whether you use sand or not, you have concentration in your mid-body. And the elbows are kind of swiftly relaxing down. You can broaden the arms, you can tuck them in closer. But as the spine feels its natural arch, making any changes to your blanket under your head, if it feels too high, you can make it lower. It's nice to try things out anyhow. Notice if that feels better, if it's lower, or stay at the same height. And as the inhale massages into the nostrils, the attempt of filling the lungs and saturating the body with this element that surrounds you. Even though you're not looking at oxygen right in the room, it is what's continuously supporting your life force. It's essential. So operate in a mechanical wave of breath and feel if your abdomen can dome and actually fill up, kind of like you're pumping it up. So the belly is concentrating with movement to massage the organs. And then bring the focus to the inhale, filling and fluttering through the lungs. So you might feel higher towards the sternum with the breath. And as you exhale, feel the descent. And it might become complicated in your brain waves, what's occurring with your breathing operation, but motion to an experience of simplicity, feeling the body breathing. And then feeling the essential circulation in opening the chest and keeping the knees extended out in the circulation and service to your hips and your core. And let's move our arms so they flow off the ground and you reach them around towards the back of your space as if you're moving your arms in more of a circular frame around the body, the upper bones. But when you feel your hands unite together at the roots of the fingers, keep it rather mild at the grip. So the hands interlace at the roots. It's not a tug of war, it's a kind of a meeting of the arms into the hands. And then let the hands separate and feel them both stretching straight back and noticing what elevation is best for your shoulders. So for me, I move them a little towards the ceiling. That feels better for my shoulder balance. And you might feel concentrated to reach them both back so the waist stretches. But it's important to notice how your shoulder feels. So if one shoulder is feeling tripped up and difficulties around the muscles or the joints are feeling fatigued, then find where it's balancing, where it's honest balance. So gain a breath and then feel if you can experience one breath where you inhale and the arms flow a little bit back. And then you open out the arms, find that right amount of lift through the arm muscles to open out. And as soon as the arms sweep down, I want you to unbuckle, wherever you can find that belt connector, slide it off of the leg parts so that you can easily get the belt. And you're actually going to want to slide it off of your back. So pull your belt around, bring the knees to point up so that you might lift up your rear just for a moment to get your belt so we can use that in a moment. And then move the sandbag away and lift up the right foot and cross that right foot over to the left knee. And then coordinate your right knee to move open. Okay, so feel how you can put the right foot to the right, actually the bones of the ankle on the left knee. And then if you have a ball, you want to place that at the upper outer left hip. If you have a block, use the block flat, or you can also use a towel. You can also use a sandbag. That's actually probably your ideal if you don't have a ball, because it's softer, right? It's tight, but it's not going to push into your skin so much. Now, as you lean your body weight to this ball, the exploration today is going to be at two variations with this leaning. One's going to use the belt. Okay, so we're still going to be having this tip over sensation with our legs. So you have that right foot connected to the left knee. Yep. Your left hand holds onto the right knee, I believe. That seems like the right attachment. And monitor the hold on the right knee and experience the sensation in the right upper leg, close to the hip, around to the buttock. And likely you can influence the circulation by holding onto the knee. and kind of pulling it a little towards you. Okay, you can also move it across. Of course, it won't be a large movement because you're keeping everything embodied. Nothing's getting pulled apart, just pride. P-R-Y, prying the ligaments. Okay, now as you move your knees back center, get a belt and attach the belt unbuckled under your right foot. And as that right knee kind of points open, I want you to keep that ball or sandbag or block, whatever you have, on the upper outer left leg. I'm starting to move this one closer to my thigh versus like right at my buttock. Okay, for this one, it's right at the upper outer left thigh. And now when you hold onto the belt with your left hand, I want you to lift up that right leg so it's pointing the heel towards the sky. The left leg stays the same, right? It's still bending. But as you lean over to the left now, you have the same directional assignment going left, but the right leg is straight-ish as it can be. And the left leg is kind of a balancing support. So press into that right heel. Reach the right arm up besides your head. If that's too much, you can keep the right hand on the floor or anywhere, maybe even on your rib cage, to keep you in control of balance. You don't want to fall off of your bolster on this one. So try to push into the right heel, and then right with the hand holding the belt, feel that the foot pushing into the belt actually gives you direction with your left arm, how extended it is to that left side. Okay, and use traction to guide this right leg to stretch. Okay. Now, once that right arm comes down by the side, I know some of these can feel very like positional design. So I want you to give a little bit of freedom to your movement. You'll bend your right knee. When you draw the leg back center, lift that right foot straight up and then hold with both hands so that the belt is held onto and you're trying to strike a stretch into your right, the bones at the base of the right leg, even though the top of the leg is essential to be grounded to support that length. So get that belt so you pull on the foot and you notice, especially internally, maybe without your eyes kind of glaring at the foot, but you'll notice that how the belt is on the foot changes the calf awareness. So pull. And then as you bend through that right knee, I want you to lower the foot and then slide the belt off your foot and then change the crossing, left ankle to the right knee, ball to that upper outer right thigh, and then lean your body weight into that ball. Okay, right hand holds the left knee. Consider continual kind of focus through each of these positions. They do kind of accumulate. There's a cumulative effect to the sequence for the core. If your left foot touches a block or there's something there that's of service to your position, use that. And the left arm could be anywhere you're comfortable, whether it's resting, reaching, and then feeling that thread of connection with the right hand holding that left knee, guiding the leg across is what I like to emphasize. But there's like this subtle quality you're trying to emphasize, to notice the attachment at the top of the thigh where it's gripped up, and breathing with that belly soft, and that consideration of massaging the core organs, the corgans. Okay, can this time you maintain that hold on that knee for a few more. Okay, and you know where your belt is. So what I want us on this side, since we have a little bit of alignment assignment going on, Okay, you can feel the left knee when it's pointing, when it's bending, that puts a little bit of traction into this left hip to stretch. So now what about when you bring your left knee back up to the starting point, you let go of the knee, and you take your belt under your left foot, lift it up, the leg up, and then lean over towards that right side and feel when the leg squishes over. The difference of sensation in the leg, maybe you still feel some upper leg into the hip bone pressure. Okay. So as the condition moves, circulation, right, the pose conditions the leg. So kind of feel how we're monitoring movement around our leg. Stretch the left arm back and further. And further for you might mean the arm is towards the ceiling. It might mean the arm reaches back and you kind of wrangle with your torso, get that fullness. If the blanket under your head is too bulky, you can always even remove it for this one. It's not required. Required breathing. Okay, feel where there is resistance with the right hand, right? It's got to pull and tug. So the noticer is now going to lower the left hand down. And then as you guide that left knee into a mild bend, and then bring the leg back up, hold onto the belt with both hands. You might scoop the belt around the top of the hand, so you kind of wind it around so it's a little easier on your fingers. But very soon we're going to stretch those fingers out. So now my right knee is open. It just happened to be. Now, I don't know if you remember last time if that was the direction. This is something I kind of noticed what happened in part 1 and part 2 of the same directions. But when you do pull that right knee back in balance and center, try to bring that right knee to point up and feel the foot slide a little downward. So it's not like you're trying to pull the leg as high up as possible. Find a coordinated balance. And then we'll bend the left knee and we'll take the belt off, and big changes here with the balance. So what we're going to work our way towards is we're going to turn so that we are facing back to the bolster. So I want you to roll to the left or right, and you're going to turn and take your blanket, one of them, under your knees. This will be a very brief spine message and core message sequence. So when your hands open out, your bolster stays about the same. I want you to let your toes stretch under. Actually, you know what? Your bolster, you might push a little bit up away so your knee doesn't hit the bolster. So you'll bring your knees together and you'll tuck your right knee in. It's a cat variation, but you're tucking the knee in and flexing the spine. And then as you stretch your right leg back, I want you to reach back through that leg and lift up your head, looking away, right, or looking forward in your direction where you are. And then tuck that right knee back in towards your forehead, chin to chest. And now stretch the right leg straight back. Push the left leg back so you're in basically a plank pose. That's pretty much the assigned position. But reach back into your heels. Find something good about this, that the legs can be long, even though all the body weight goes arms and uppers, the uppers. And then bring the right knee down to the blanket and tuck the left knee in towards your forehead, chin to chest. And inhale, reach the right leg back and lift up your gaze forward and feel how that concentrates the core muscles up to the throat to stretch. And exhale, knee towards forehead, chin to chest. Inhale, left foot back on the floor, stretch through the calf. Lift up the right knee this time and stretch both feet back, hips up in downward dog, and allow the brain to let its wave of motion lower down. Maybe it touches the bolster, maybe it's far away, but when you encourage that armpit chest to open, Feel that fullness. Okay, and then walk your hands back or your feet also forward towards your blanket and take a standing forward bend for a few moments where the spine kind of drizzles down out of the pelvis, spine drizzle, and the weight of your head starts to stretch out your sides. So you might wiggle your shoulders. You might let the body move side to side through the knees bending. You might take a wider step out with your feet, but relax the conditions of your mid body into kind of persuading it to use the shape for stretching and traction. It's nice to use the shape and the traction in the body from the shape to stretch you, not to be using muscles and tension to do the stretching. So taking the support of inverting the body, breathing and letting the arms be wherever it feels natural for you. Maybe hands have to relax, hold the elbows completely hanging. Does the spine feel any sensation of gripping in this position? Or can it just surrender? I know your sinuses will notice it, right? There's a little bit of that circulatory improvement when you get out of it, usually. You gotta endure. Yeah, come out anytime you need to. If you're ready to shift out, go for it. If you want to stay a little longer, stay. And then as you move your hands back forward and your feet maybe also moves a little back, you're going to kind of scoot your way back down to the hands and the knees. And then we'll move our hands so they're a little farther forward than your natural all fours position, but let the tops of the feet relax. And then move from your spine around to the back of the pelvis and then into cat pose. Chin moves in towards the chest. Great. So as you inhale, you feel the spine moving closer in the middle of the back when you arch the spine and farther away in the stomach when you arch. And then when you round, you feel that spread of the muscles across your back opening. Chin to chest, flexing spine. So alternate for the next few moments, cat-cow. Feel if you can maneuver your spine to naturally rounding and opening up the back, and then brainstem releasing. Okay, now can you let the body find a little bit of a pause in the center? And then we'll move our blanket back up to the other side. And I want you to take a side sage. So you're going to lean your bolster, or you're going to take it away from the blankets, and then turn it on its horizontal positioning. So it's across your mat. And then the blankets, I think this would be a good one to make them pretty perfect. So have 2 quarter folds, okay? No rolled up blankies here. And if it's too low of a stack for your head, if it feels like you're kind of dropping your ear and it's gripping your neck, then you can always take one of the blankets and make it a little bit higher, which is perfect. I actually started to use that. It's feeling a little better on my neck to use a little more height. But when you come out to the side world, feel if a block overhead is good for you. And if you want a ball on the inside of the right leg, you can use that. Something I've liked lately is to use both the block under my right foot on this side and the ball on the inside of the right leg. And then I have this kind of convenient, nicely supported therapeutic position for my side layer. It might be a little bit, too much setup to go with, but you never know. It might feel good on your knee. It might feel like, oh, so much support. Easy to set up. So we add our sand on the outer right thigh or the waist, and we come into this side layer of reaching with that right side bone structure. If part of the structure feels like it's bones that are spacing apart, part of the experience besides the physicality is that mindfulness helps you get a little bit more inner space. So considering when you proceed in the pose to plug into the present, right? Notice if you have expectations of getting further, deeper, more, and maybe just center on what's occurring with accepting. Essentially, if that right arm doesn't like to reach this far, it goes to the side, it goes across to the left arm, or maybe you have it in a little more of a dynamic experience where it's kind of open, it feels like it's energized, but it's easygoing for some of us to do this. So settle into the side energy. We've kind of stirred it up a bit today with going into the inverted pattern and the cat motions. So this might feel like you're already kind of warmed up. So a few of the breaths are 4-count inhale and 5-count out breath. And really let the weight of your body sink into the props. So with that costal, intercostal muscles between ribs breathing, and now loosen the connection that may be overhead for you. If that's occurring, you're going to start to lower that right arm towards your side. Now you might want to keep that block overhead. What I want us to assign our bones to is this variation of 2-part supported back bend chest opener and also another inversion. So some of you will find the inversion works okay, and some will be too much to attempt. So we'll have varying levels of kind of researching ourselves. So when you roll your body weight a little to the left, I have my legs so lifted up that I can't really pull the knee in comfortably. So when I move my sand away, and I roll my ribs to the left, then I can kind of slide this right leg in. Maybe it's not that complicated. Then come on up. And when you roll to your back, get a block. I know you got one overhead likely, but you got another one, I think. I think most people have 2 blocks. I don't think many people have just one. But they sell them individually, I suppose. So maybe some people have one. Well, anyhow, now you move onto your back. I want this bolster to be under your, as much close to your back. Like, we're not going to sit on the bolster for the pose, but you're going to have a block under your pelvis, maybe. So here's the 2 different options. And neither one is better or more impressive than the other for your body in the end of it, the pose. So I'm going to kind of move this. I think this blanket stack is too much. So I'm going to go 2 blankets flat on top of each other here, pull it in. I think that's perfect. Now this is considered mountain brook pose, right? So it's a lot of arching, travel through the circulatory breathing operation, right? So if I'm here, it's different than your first pose today. It kind of takes your breath away. It has so much pressure in your upper lobes of your lungs. It's kind of impressive if you can breathe when you're doing this position and get that intake to a good 5 count. If that's possible, you're kind of working up to that. 3 is reasonable. Now, this is, I can do this now. My back seems pretty warm for it, but let's say it doesn't feel good. Then you put a block under the back of your pelvis. And then I bet you might feel pretty good with that. And you can work with that balance and stretch your legs down. So I'm going to give these 2 options. I think I prefer this now. I can do both and then find this one. And if you're in this level with your legs straight down, add a sandbag across them, the top of your thighs, that's it. I'm all over the place here. Now, if you have a belt nearby, easy to handle, you'll move it overhead and you'll feel where you can hold. But the emphasis with this hold of the belt, you can do this without your block under your pelvis too, the hold of the belt, if you like that advanced, chest opener. And knowing that a chest opener in advancing stage is going to be a long workout, right? A little more vascular workout. So feel where you hold the belt. That grips up the lung force, makes you work a little harder. That you can work on your system even when you seem to be very quiet looking. It's kind of nice. Okay, now feel where the waist is lengthening. Okay, whether it's arch or you have a block under your pelvis, it's still arching. Okay, so this is going to be the stage you can stay in for about another 1.5 minutes if you want, whether your back is off of a block or on one. And the final stage I'm going to give as an option will be to go with legs up without the sand on the feet for certain. So you'll need a block under your pelvis for legs up. And when you have your sand off to the side, you'll want to open your arms out so that it's like the shoulder blades are moving down the back, and you want to feel your arms almost kind of hold the bolster, right? So my armpit chest is kind of touching my bolster. And then when the legs walk in, you got a block for certain under your back. You'll bring one knee in and you'll kind of feel how you push off your feet and then move your legs up. And the tendency they try to shove back. So keep them straight up and work on this surplus of the ribs so that you can let this area grow wider and fuller, which it can actually increase in its size, right? This area will develop with practice. You'll probably feel better at a maturing age that this has more fullness than it drops down and you sink, right? And you go downwards with gravity. So consider this as a rich support for your musculature in your rib cage. And if the legs are kind of closed in, like they kind of suction together, I'm doing this as a prep because we're going to do legs up the wall at the end. So I want you to notice how the legs are pulled up with all the support under your back. For some of you might feel like it's more challenging, but after a while I find this easier. It just takes practice. So that's what they say. So tailbone is pressing, right, into the block. Now, some of you might not be here. You might be in the position with the legs straight down and the sandbag on and the arms open and be there still, and that's great. So give a few more moments here. If your arms are open like a banner out, feel where the weight of the neck gently lengthens and the shoulders center back. Now you want the legs to be very close. And if there's a shakiness in the inner leg, feel if you can let the feet be neutral. So there's no flexing feet on this version. It's like the feet go up towards the sky feet. New name for the pose, sky feet. Okay, now with a rib spatial expansion, ballooning the ribs. Okay, now as we lower 1 foot at a time, so bend a knee, lower the foot, bend a knee, so it's all easy to shift. So when you push into your feet, lift up a little bit so you can slide. It's a very small amount so this block can go away. And then when you begin the process of rolling out of this one, I want you to try to work with this rib. The chamber might not be the best word for it with this movement because it's kind of this rotunda. So I want you to try to work with that rolling over into your bolster to get to your other side sage. So you know where you're aiming. And so the rolling of that rotunda over towards the right hip, and then prep your body for this next shape, right? The right hip down, the ball, the block. If you use the ball only, that's fine. The block might be almost overrated idea. I'm not sure if that's even really that helpful. Okay, so come into the side. So you've got your right knee hooked up towards the bolster. You got your left thigh open on its hip hinge. Well, it's the side of the layer. Sand along the sides, and then let your right arm either hook between the bolster and the blankets. And then as your head lowers down, let's say this second side, you notice some differences in your neck support. Maybe you need your blanket higher. Maybe you find that it's very comfortable here, even if it doesn't feel like there's a lot of bulk under it. So let it be with what feels comfortable and maybe looks comfortable to your vision, but feeling the arm circulation out of the rib cage. If it's a little tough in your shoulder and this feels not uncomfortable overhead, you might expand the arm, open. Okay, and then feel how this rib spaciousness is very important as we proceed, right? Every pose has like, we're trying to gain some internal space. So opening and breathing slow. Great, so feeling if the left thigh has any influence, if it's basically centered for the benefit of your upper body to move deeper. We are going to move into the lower body, into the hip, and the discipline of working with our core again. So I suppose that's kind of talked a lot often about, like it's a discipline of working with the core, like it's tough stuff. So let's see if we can make it a little enjoyable. So when you work with this left side lengthening, feel that balance that's starting to work into your front left side of your core, your back left side of the core. And then if that left arm is reaching to the block, start to remove that attempt to reach. And as you open out the left arm, or maybe you need to hug it in to your side, I want you to start to come around from this pose pattern, and you're going to let your body roll to the right, and the sand goes away. But let's keep connected on this left leg. Let's see. So I want you to move your left knee in towards your right, okay? And when you roll to that right side, stay kind of in this zone of your left hip. So you're going to slide your bolster to the right side of your mat on the side yard. And you're going to roll onto your back again. Let's see where all your props are. You got blocks, you got blankets, too many behind you. You just need one. So you're going to lower carefully. You might even have to hug your knees in and roll onto your back, so it's all easy. Roll into your back and enjoy a knee tucking position, hugging the knees in towards the chest. Kind of find what is comforting about that, whether you kind of wiggle, you move your knees, you squirm around, and squirm until you can find your center. Squirmy center. Wormy centers. All right. Feel the inhale, push the torso. And the exhale, center the knees. Okay, now I like to let the knees have some separation and also not to be too pressurized around the front. So you might find that the hands behind the legs works better, like your hands are in the slot of the back of the knee. And you might even notice that that pocket there, I think most of us, this is not going to be this arthritic area back in this zone. It's going to be around, you know, the front, the inner, the little outer. These are kind of the layers that get the challenges. So when your right leg lowers down, hopefully you got space, you don't get pushed into a wall. When your right leg lowers down, you're going to cross the left leg over to the bolster. Let's see what we got props around us here. Okay, what I want you to do with that left leg is to use the ball, or if you've got a block, you can use that onto your sacrum, onto the sacrum. And the sand is an option on this outer left leg. Okay, so feel where you have that span of experience in your chest muscles. And if you like sand instead on your left armpit, you can also do that as well. You've got one sand, that's likely all what you're going to use with your ability to maneuver around. But this left limb is connected. Actually, this blanket over on this left side is quite nice. I've seen this before, but I've never happened upon it. So it's a random and it works randomly supporting my left arm. So it's a little bit elevated with my blanket. It happened to be there. So if yours is not cooperating through your pose picture, that's okay. But work with this field of the left layer of the hip, and then noticing that that hip can be stiff, and that obviously layers into our knees. So we're going to start to move into this core hip focus. Let your head relax, your eyes may be closed, or a soft gaze. And spread the breath in the mid-body. So it's out of the chest and the heart, it's lower down into the organs. Now with these moments of the crossover in the hip, trying to layer some of the instruction away from like postural naming, but focusing on the arena of emphasis in the structure. So there's not like a mental image of what it would look like in the pose, right, what your aim is, but it's always an exploration. So now the right leg can bend quite a bit. You might like to kind of scoot that right foot up closer towards your rear. You might feel very content where it happens to end up. Okay, now let's get that feel of the crossing of the leg. Give it a few more moments to steep. And I know that I oftentimes will go one side, we'll do something in between, then we'll go to the other. So I'm aware of that, the way I present the content. So there's a little purpose to that today. So now if the sand weight is clearly helping you stretch, notice the difference in the pull. Like the sand for me does feel like it's giving me a little more of a tug of my leg. Now that has goods and bads, right? So it's not realistically going to happen like that all the time, right? When you're trying to stretch. So when you move your sand away, it was nice to have it. When you move it away, the side left leg, you're going to move anything away from the sacrum, lots of aways, okay? And then as you bring your left knee up, like you're going to hold it with the right hand, so you're still crossed over in this twist. Feel that right hand hold the outer left leg. So kind of notice this IT band, right? It's this whole like strip that's on that side that connects into the knee. It's that area that you're kind of trying to move open. But we also want to get some nice balance there. So when you roll into your back, you're going to step the left and right foot a little wider than hips distance. In fact, let's make it so. So we'll have a block. We'll place the block, let's see. So it's going to be at its mid-width. And I'm going to bring my knees to my chest to be very kind to my back, not force it, but get a feel of that block between the knees so it's mid-width. And maybe actually, I think the knees are probably the best target for that versus like the thigh, because then that makes the side of the leg kind of open. So when you lower your feet down, there's a chance the block won't stay. You know, you might have some muscular work to do to keep it, but feel your width of your feet now. If they're pretty wide, let it be if they turn out a little bit or they pivot. We don't ideally want them to turn in though, the toes. So you're either going to feel like the parallel foot or a little bit of rotation out, and then put the hands to the thighs. And when you lift up your hips, right, you're basically lifting up your hip flexors, right? I want you to emphasize this width of the block, right, the support, and then feel if you can get your hips a little bit higher. And imagine this movement in your hip is greater when you have the block this wide compared to when it's narrow. Imagine this is going to be a little more abundant. So when you lift up, make it a treat for yourself to get that openness in the front and lower the spine. And then tuck the knees to the chest. And we're going to keep this pattern going. So you're going to lower your feet. You're going to lift up your arms, stretch them back overhead to drawbridge. And then you lower the spine. And then tuck the knees in. I'll hold just the sides of my shins when I tuck the knees in. The knees are like happy baby width, right? They're a little bit closer in, but not much. And then bring your arms back overhead. So continue and notice if the back feels like a rigid board when it lowers down. I want you to feel if you can let the placement of your feet spring load into the heels, and then spine lifts up and move your arms back over. This is a little study today. In a few moments, we'll keep this one going for as much time as you need. And I find this is where I'm trying to work on getting a little more elasticity in my back, especially when I'm working in lines in alignment, you know, really trying to get some decent alignment targets in my spine. So when I lower down my hips and I feel my neck kind of lift up, then I notice, well, maybe I need my blanket, and I use it. So some of us are taught, some teachers really work with the blanket height, and some say no blanket. So I'm encouraging you to try them both out. Just kind of feel, trying to get your spine to get movement. Last time, I know we've been doing this a little bit of motion, but feel the movement of the spine and the hips lift up. And then as you let your spine lower, let your torso meet the floor completely when your knees go to your chest, this last one. And then as you might feel coordinated or not, right? It could feel a little bit confusing. I want you to work with the moment of the block is gone and the belt is back. The belt is back. Okay, hopefully. Glad that we're switching this around a lot. Okay, place the belt now around your ankles. Okay, and as my feet come down and my belt, I scoop it up in the front of my lower leg bones to my front of my ankles. You're going to hold the belt. My feet are now hips distance. They could go wider, they could go closer, and I don't have a block. It doesn't, I won't know. You won't know if I have mine that wide or not, but you want to scoot your feet downwards. And I want you to lift up your hips and then have your feet enough down and forward that when you lift up your hips, you'll feel that concentration in your buttocks a little more, in the glutes. Okay? So the front of the thighs really have to work. It could get shaky, right? Especially if your feet are farther downwards. It's a bit challenging. But now as you lift up your hips, you're going to roll your shoulders back, tug on that belt firm, breathe. I know the lower belly breath is a little challenging on this one. And then as you lower your spine, I want you to keep the spine at the very tail off of the floor so you don't go all the way down. So you want to muster up one more dose here so you're still pulling on the belt. Give it a try and then lift your hips up one more time. Feel the front of the thighs and work with shoulders back, hips lift. Okay. Now with all that strength in your spine that you've done, you're going to lower the spine down. I imagine you feel your spine is kind of toned. You'll slip your feet out of the belt and then take your bolster to the left side yard. And you can scoot your way around until you find your right leg crossing over to the bolster. And use your hip circulation to roll over, right? So you kind of roll a little bit. Some of us roll more than others to kind of go in towards that crossover. And then as you add your ball and maybe your sandbag to the exterior thigh. Now my left foot is turned out, right? So the left little toe side of my foot is on the floor. So it's not exactly toes up on this one with the left foot. So you'll find that when you cross over that sand to the leg, on the right leg, outer leg, your right limb almost kind of begs to just open, right? It's a natural direction assignment for your arm. And then when the appendages are crossing from the midline, feed into the weight of your head rolling to the right. I imagine you got a blanket under your head for this version, but not everyone always uses one. Okay, now last side, I really like the blanket under my open arm. That felt really good. So you might play with that. Maybe feel your arm when it's lightly lifted by something under it on that right arm. Yeah, instead of like doing your maximum arm position open, maybe you do 5% less, right? So you have a blanket under it. So these connective layers can soften. So if you feel a stiffness, sometimes it's hard to really lay into releasing. So notice the layers of direction with your mind, especially when you don't know what the next pose is going to be. You just be here and react with your breathing response. Feel the abdomen on its twisted position, that intra-abdominal pressure, massaging the organs, strengthening. So with a few of the directions here, simplified, your head might roll to the right. You might sweep the left foot in a little closer. So you kind of tuck it up towards your buttocks, a little bit the underside, the left leg. And feeling the ribs react with the breath. They might feel like they're just kind of pressed down into the body. So your work is on filling them up. With a few more moments, I'm giving you an option when we're on our back line here, what you feel like motioning in towards before we come up. We are going to do a set that works quite a bit through really low level, not low level standing poses, but not like a half moon or anything, but they'll be very grounded and rooted in the hips. So high density ones. But let's just kind of do a check-in here and noticing where in your body, if it feels like it's kind of been wished around, like in the washing machine right now, like they kind of spun around and twisted. And maybe it doesn't want to go through another full kind of cycle of twisting around. Maybe you want something smooth before you move up. So give a couple options here. If you want to do some very kind of disciplined core patterns, you'll do the 90-degree angle. So what you'll work with is taking your sand and your ball away and let the legs go straight up, back of the pelvis. Concentrate on floor, not on any object. And there's belts everywhere here. The knees center and the legs straight up, and my feet are flexed. And this might feel pretty balancing for you. And then you let the hands be besides the hips, the feet go forward, flex the feet, come back up. So that's one option. And those that find this 90, 60, 40 doesn't work for your nervous system right now, you're going to take a belt and you'll place the belt under your feet instead, which I actually think I like this one now, right now in the moment. And then let the hands be pretty passive holding the belt. And you'll work with the elbows on the floor, and you use the slack of the belt to help you find support. And it's the same thing though. We're still doing the 90, which is straight up with the feet, not too far back, just straight up so you feel kind of the rim of the back of the pelvis. If you were to like have a paintbrush, you kind of notice that it kind of swings out at that back pelvis space. So use this for just a few more seconds. We're going from 90 to 60 or 40 degree, and you're getting that core kind of warmed up in that lower belly. Okay, if your elbows come off the floor, that's fine. This is more organic than it is exactitude. Okay, we'll get to that. So last time you come up, stabilize and bring your knees so that they are actually moving side to side. So if windshield wiper works for you, feet on the floor, knees side to side, or let the knees go side to side without any foot down. Okay, I want you to let your body give a full roll like you're going to crawl, right? So you're going to roll to a side. And then when you come up, you're going to slide your blanket in from the back. So you've got one blanket in a quarter fold. And you've got a spare, I don't know what this blanket, well, you know what, we are going to use it in a bit. So I want you to have this other blanket in another quarter fold right off to the side, anywhere, sideward. And then you'll move on the knees on the blanket, but as you have your blocks to the sides of the mat, take a simple reach of your hands to the bolster in front. We're getting a lot in today, aren't we? So it already feels like a full practice. Okay, a little bit more. So we've got the arms in front and they're wide on the bolster, and I'm going to kind of slowly work my way here to reaching my hips back. So I would like you to kind of notice your back frame, this low back of the, well, just simply the low back, not necessarily specific points, but when you stretch it back, work on this opening up, versus trying to reach your hips to your heels like child's pose. I want you to try to let that back space open. Now the arms could be tired from this type of reach, so the bolster could be closer to you. You can also have your hands on the floor if that's too much in your shoulders to have that lift. That could be too bulky in your upper back. So position that spine to lengthen, okay? And let your head lower down. If you need a block under your head, grasp one. You can always put something under your forehead. But let the breath start to span across the back blades. Okay, now walk your hands to the top right corner of your space. You could have your hands on the floor to that right side. You could have one hand on the bolster, one hand on the floor. So that left wing works its way. Now, if it's too much, keep the hands on the floor. Okay. Now walk the hands up the bolster and over to the left side. So my knees could be together and they could be apart. And it does change the circulation demand in your back waist when they're together. It's a little bit more pull. Okay, now when you come back to the center line, let's take the bolster over to the side. And I want you to move a block set on the inside of your mat and actually have some consideration of this back that we've been kind of opening. So when you step your right foot forward between your blocks, actually it might be in front of the blocks, your foot can take whatever step it wants to. But when you stretch the foot forward, the knee bending, start to glide the right knee towards the front of the space, and then work with your hands as low on the blocks as you can have them. Okay, your hands are on it's the outside of the foot versus inside your right foot. So there's broadness in the whole back, the back planet back. So lengthen the front of that left leg. It can always go more. I know it's probably a ribbon of grip, but feel that left leg move down. Okay, and then hook your toes under on your left foot. Now notice that's going to kind of spring up into the front of the thigh when your toes hook under. So when you lift up that back leg off of the knee off the blanket, try to spread the heel back. Okay, keep that heel reaching. And then as you lift up your right leg so it's fully straightening out the back of the knee, you're going to lengthen the back heel to the floor. Now this is one where I think the parallel foot is not always the best message into your hip. So a little turnout is ideal, right? You'll see this in all the triangle pose variations. The back foot is turned out a little bit. Some of us train with it a little wider than others with the direction, but feel your position right now. So your feet are in two different tracks, right? They're not exactly in the same track, but your right hand is going to go up. So I want you to either keep your blocks flat, kind of decide, is this too much in my leg? Do I need my blocks a little higher? Okay. And then bring your right hand to your sacrum and you're going to turn your waist. So it's like this waist it's rotating. It's like a bowl. Well, it is kind of like a bowl, isn't it? It's a pelvic bowl, but it's above the actual pelvic plate, right? I want you to have this belly bowl. It's the belly bowl that's turning to the right side. I can still have fun with this practice. Okay, turn to the right side and try to let this back be very strong. This is so steady here. I want to have this back strong. So the right hand can be on your back. It could be in the air. It's probably not going to hold your back foot though. And you rotate the torso. You can have your block under your left hand as high as you want, as high as you can make your block, huh? And if it's not a stable block, stack two on top of each other. Okay. Okay, now lower that right hand to the sacrum for all of us, and we're going to turn towards the right leg. Take the blocks both on the highest height and taking that extended reach through your torso. So feel the spine arching like in cow pose. Okay, and then try to round your back in towards cat. Yeah, is it even flexible in this type of a spread out position? And then try to arch your spine. Yeah, be realistic, it's challenging. And then round. Okay, and then step the left foot to the right in wide stance. So their feet are a little wider than hips distance. And then as you bring your hands back to the calves, lower your head down. And if there's any blocks in the way, kindly move them aside so you don't knock out your head here. And let the weight of the brain stretch the spine. We've done this once before today, so we're getting some equilibrium from the front part of the practice towards the back. And then feel the hips as they lift. Try to get your hips to lift up. We're not going to do a handstand right now, but you want to get this momentum of the lower bones trying to lift up so the kind of the brain C can lower down. Okay. Now, as you bend your knees, like you're going in towards a squat, you'll bring your hands to your blocks. Scoot your toes or your feet back together. So I would step your feet in so the big toes are close to touching. And then step the right foot back and reach through the leg and lower the knee down. Why not go into where we were suggesting last time? The blocks might be too spread forward for you, but you might like it. So I would encourage that feeling of lengthening through the right front rim of the hip by pushing forward a little bit with your leg position. So your left knee is pointing front, your right thigh is angling down. There's a nice kind of contour of your hip. Good. Your back knee doesn't have to stay on the blanket. It either works for you or it doesn't, right? You find the positional sensitivity, right, to your bones and your joints. Okay, now if that knee down is kind of nice because it's a weight opportunity for you to kind of unweight yourself, right? That gives some traction. So for some of us, we might stay with the knee down, but about now is a good time to feel that left knee forward and then stretch the right heel back. Really position your heel to press and then start to lower the back heel towards the floor. So you find that when you look back and you've done each side kind of back to back, so you have some consciousness about how your hips moved. You know, one side, I imagine your foot can be more parallel than the other because of hip stuff and sometimes knee. So I would take a decent step so your feet are not on the same track, but your back foot is turned out a little bit, but not so much that you have to swing your right hip out. So track your hips. Right hand is on a block, any height that works for you. So let's say last time you had your block at the mid height and it was a little tiring for your left hamstring. Bring the block up and reach the left hand for the sacrum and feel the body turn to that left side. So you're in rotation. You're going to turn through the waistband. Good. So get that feel of your back heel. If it's up off the ground, that's okay. Right? So notice the selection of energy in the both legs, right? So the inner leg energetic is quite spiky right now. It really spikes the circulation. And so you might feel kind of that surge of energy in your left hip. Left arm can stay on the back. It could stretch up. You could keep it pretty mild and it reaches back on an angle. And noticing how your stomach tries to turn. Can your tummy rotate as well? I don't know, I'll ask my tummy if it wants to rotate. So feeling. And left hand comes to the sacrum for all of us. Okay, so find that rotation now from your torso down. So belly faces down. Now we're going to get a full stretch through the leg, hip. 2 final positions before legs up. So I want you to slide in your bolster. So this time it's under your legs. Okay. Now when the back leg comes down, it doesn't need to stay pressing. So I want you to reach through the back front thigh and walk the left foot over towards the right. In pigeon, the left knee opens. So if this is a bit cranky for your knee or hip, you might have your blocks a little bit up and feel that connection into your core, the movement out of the back core. So if you're warmed up into this transition, you might find you can keep your blocks up to create that full pigeon pose, right? Not sleeping pigeon. But if you want to go to sleep in your pigeon, you could. I don't know if I could sleep in pigeon pose, but I don't think that's a good idea. Okay. Lower the elbows if your blocks are helping you to keep that arch. If you want to keep your hands down. It's a little tiring on a wrist, right? To try to push, even if you can, and there's a little bit of tension. I imagine it might be intelligent that I have a few moments where my wrists aren't getting pressed on and through my hand pressure points, right? Palm down. So you might have your elbows on some height. I think I prefer pigeon with the bolster. Kind of change it up sometimes, but I think this is just the when you're trying to meet that criteria for the hip, this is a good direction. You can't really mess it up. You know, you stay with the alignment standard. You know, if that right thigh is pretty neutral here, it's not trying to tuck your foot towards your rear, you keep it neutral, stretching down. Okay, now as you lean into your left hip, you're gonna swing to the other side. So come up, make it pretty smooth. So you're swinging to the other side, right knee down, left leg back. And as you come to the left leg back, maybe you decide to push up on your blocks. So you feel that arch, but feel that smoothness through your spine and that steady strength. I know that some of us, these sequences aren't necessarily what your home practice might be if you're not taking a class session. So they're likely going to be kind of an evolution in sequencing sometimes, I find. So understanding that still might feel challenging. Even at the end of the session, right? Still challenging moments. So the elbows maybe come down. And as the elbows touch to the blocks or the floor, whichever works for you, you'll feel where the sitting bone on that right side might actually lift up on the bolster versus kind of lean back. So one version is more of a cat spine, and you're kind of rounded. But, you know, spine extension, when we come to our last pose next, is really important to relate to because it's a little more of a lift up in the heart. It's certainly challenging, but after practice, it's accumulative in the effect for your organs. Okay, now with the back leg heavy, the right leg could not feel heavier. Okay, layer a few moments here to feel the circulation, even up into the back waist. Breathing. Okay, scan the back corner of your hips that you've just been targeting. Okay, now this takes us into a pretty intermediate closure of practice. So I want you to try to manage your props, but when you move your blocks away, meaning this kind of stays energetically up, right, as it becomes really passive at all. So we slide the weight into our right hip, but we swing the left leg forward. Now, when you move your bolster to the wall, okay, unless you're going to put your legs up on a chair or up on your bolster, which is fine, you can do bolster bench. I want you to have this elevation that we worked with like a half hour ago, right? Where we had the block under the sacrum and then the bolster. So you're going to have your blanket lengthwise from your bolster. So you kind of have this T. Looks like a T to me. And then you'll add your sandbag to your positioning support. So I want you to come up so that your seat is at the wall. And you want to get your tush as close as you can. I know most of us have had so much of this tutorially, But when you lift up your legs, get your back so it's supported and elevated, and then it kind of squishes the bolster. You're using the total body weight. You want to use all your body weight to drop into the props and the wall. And then there becomes this kind of openness in the front space. And during our other times of our life, besides our yoga practice, right, bulk of the time, this front space might be crowded and dropping forward. So get some weight on your feet, get more weight. And as that elevation occurs, okay, relax the control of the torsos, right? You might think of yourself as having multiple different torso spaces besides just lower belly. And then try to widen through the back of the pelvis. It's really subtle work that you fine tune. So if I was, with you in that a little bit past the screen space, it would be kind of trying to fine tune, like, can you get this space in the lower belly, in the hips, that everything kind of feels like an open, and then the arms kind of flow back. Either the hands are spatially opening or they're relaxing, and the ribs widen. Yeah, everything can always improve on this cycle of moving the breath in through the nose. But experience that it's settled and purely supported by your props and your breath and the brain resting back. If you can let the brain surrender for a few moments here. Experience being. The sound of your breath. Let the space at the back of the legs elongate without efforting in the feet, and with a direct relationship of the back of the neck heavy. With that stillness through the spinal column all the way through the brainstem, and then it encapsulates at the back of the brain, kind of like a hood, right? It covers over the crown. Gonna keep your hood on, and you'll bend your knees and have that, maybe that complex awareness there, but as you bend your knees and you move your sand away, you'll let your feet come back to the first position. This is kind of restorative yoga first position, Baddha Konasana. Knees apart. Now the inside of the foot is more open than it was in the beginning, right? Because we don't have a belt pulling the feet together. So with that inner thigh satisfaction, and then as you feel the knees move in and closer, right, just the right amount for your back, so you find the spacing of the knees slight, and then roll to a side and bring yourself around to sitting up. Take a few moments to find a sitting position, so there's a centering of the collective. However, the dimensions that we can feel the awareness together. You hear something coming in through the screen. Let your hands lift up. And as the balance is from right to left, it goes from top to bottom, brain bowing into your heart center and surrendering there. Breathe in together, filling the body, breathing in wellness, and with exhalations, bowing into your heart.